Welcome back to the lectures. We are going to download SSMS version 18 and install it. Then you are going to connect to an instance, and then we are going to create a database that will be used for the next lectures. First of all, you open your browser, then you can type download SSMS and make sure, as usual, to go to the Microsoft.com website. Usually, when you have a download page for a Microsoft product, it always proposes to you the latest version. In this case, it's the version 19. If you scroll down a little bit, you have a section called previous versions, or you also have the link here, the shortcut. So you click on previous versions. You need to double click here. And here you have all the releases. I want to stick to the 18, but you are free to go with the latest version, the 19.2. I don't think there is much difference between them. I have to go read the release notes, but I'm going to stick with the 18.12. Also, if you click on the first link here, it will, by default, download your regional installation. For example, I'm based in Switzerland right now. If I click here, it will download the French version for me because I'm in the French part of Switzerland. But you can force the language by selecting one of these languages. So I'm going to stick to English because this full lecture is in English. And it starts the download. It's almost 700 megabytes. So you need to wait a little bit. While it's still downloading, I can check the latest features of the 19 version. It's quite long, so what we have, very interesting, support for SQL Server 2022 and has the latest compatibility level, Azure Data Studio integration. So these two are quite important. The download is finished, so I open my download folder and I can run the SSMS setup.exe file. Double click on it. It's good practice to always keep default installation files. So when you have something to troubleshoot, you easily find support because you have, let's say, a standard installation. Of course, if you have specific, like you're installing on servers with different partitions for programs and data, then you can change this. But by default, I recommend just sticking to the default installation setting. Select install. The installation is relatively long. It takes a few minutes. The setup is completed. Components have been installed successfully. I can close. I can restart my laptop. Once you restarted your laptop or your desktop, of course, or even a server or a virtual machine or a Docker container or whatever, you can open SSMS. What I do usually is that I right click and I select more and I pin it to the taskbar because we'll be using it extensively. I even prefer to have it in the middle here. I open SSMS. So it's the version 18.12. It wants to connect to my localhost using this login because it remembers the settings. The settings files are always kept when you uninstall a version and you reinstall a new one. So I just uninstalled completely SSMS and reinstalled it. This login does not work. We are going to see now how to connect. So we start with a blank page, let's say. You open SSMS, you go to connect, And here you have different services, of course. I'm selecting database engine, and here you have the localhost, because usually you use the localhost because it's your local machine. So this should work for you too. We do not have yet a SQL Server authentication because we had the SA administrator login and we had the Windows authentication. So let's say I use my Windows authentication and I connect. I should not have any database except the system databases that are already there. So we need to create a new database. It's super easy. We are going to do it using graphical user interface. You just click on database. You do a right click, new database. For me, it will be Expert-Only. You can select something else for you, whatever you like, something explicit for you. You can keep everything as is and it should be fine. You don't touch anything else. You just select OK and you have a database and you should be up and running. Don't forget that I am connected with my Windows account now, which is an administrator of the instance. So I have all the rights, so I can do anything. So you need to be careful when you connect. Now we are going to see how to create a new login. I'm going to create just a login that I will be using because you can have a SQL Server authentication also. So you don't use always the administrator account. I will be naming the login expert only. I just choose a complex password for safety. I confirm my password. I do not want the password to expire because it's just some local environment for testing. The default database, I will select expert only. And now you can go to server roles. So you can say, I'm a DB creator, process administrator, disk administrator. So this should be okay. And you have the user mappings. Again, I select expert only. For expert only, I can be the DB owner. That's not a big deal. DB owner should include the other operations. I'm not a database administrator, so I'm not an expert in database security, but this should do the job. Okay, here you just double check on the status tab that you can connect to the database engine and that you can log in. And that should be it. Let's see if it works. I validate the login creation. So just one thing, to make sure you can work properly using your SSMS, depending on the version. So here, for example, I have the version 18.12.1, which is relatively old. So what you can do is you can change the compatibility level of your database. You select the database, you right click, properties. Then you go to options using the administrator account, by the way. And then you can select which version you want. So let's just take the previous one, SQL Server 2019. You validate and you refresh. So it means this specific database will behave as if it had a 2019 SQL Server version, and it won't have the latest options and you won't have compatibility issues. Let's connect now with the SQL Server authentication and our login expert only we just created. However, the password that is here is the old one. So I'm just pasting my new password. I select connect and I can see my database now. Let's see if we can create a table. So you just right click on the database, you select new query, and you can use this script that will be available as a resource for this lecture to see if we can create a very simple customer table. Refresh. So we have the table here. And I see you on the next lecture.